All right, it's time for another RuPaul's Drag Race episode review for season 10, episode 3. And the theme of this episode is dating apps. So I thought it'd be fun for our activity to talk about dating apps. So this is Nick's Nerd Network, and I'm Nick.
And I'm not.
So, going along with the theme of this week's episode, talking about dating apps, I thought it would be fun to discuss not only maybe some of our own personal stories with dating apps, but also share some stories from some other friends that wish to remain anonymous based on the story. So, do you have any stories that you wish you'd like to share about dating app experience?
I mean, honestly, I never really did like the whole dating app thing. I mean, I've been with my partner for almost 6 years, so before that, I wasn't really out in the scene or, on any dating apps. But my partner and I, Elias, which he's been on the show, he's not here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, who is your partner?
We went to DC like 3 years ago, and we just, whenever we travel, we'll get on Grindr or something just to kind of see who's around. We were at a hotel, and this one guy messaged me on there saying, "Hey, I will pay you $1,000 if you come over and wear scrubs and act like you're my doctor." And I was like, $1,000, but it's like, it was creepy, but it was hilarious.
Did you do it?
No.
It's like,
we didn't know the area, and I wasn't going to risk going out somewhere. I mean, the Craigslist killer,
Where were you gonna find scrubs so late at night?
Well, he said he had them. He would have provided them.
Oh, well, you know what? That's just being a good host.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you have scrubs, you're probably like a doctor who can like saw off people's body parts, and just.
Yeah, it's important to be safe. I mean, you have to keep in mind, like, if you're going on a date on one of these apps, that you're essentially meeting a stranger. So make sure that you're taking precautions and you're meeting in a safe place and things like that. I would say my story is not as good as some of these other ones that I have on the back burner, but I'll just do a quick explanation. So when I first moved to Columbus, I went on one of my first ever dates, and the guy, it was just a bad date in general. Throughout the date, he just talked about himself the whole time, and he went through 2 bottles of wine on his own. He did not share. 2 bottles on his own. It must have, I don't know, like, I thought I was apparently a bad date, so that way they were just not interested, and they just needed to drink a whole lot to get through it. But then it ended, and I was like, hey, like, this is a great date, like, great hanging out. I've got to meet some friends for actually happy hour later. He's like, oh, sure, I'd be happy to go get drinks with you later. I'm like, oh, no, I mean, it's just my friends, and it's happy hour. He's like, oh, no, that's fine, I don't mind. So he followed me to the happy hour, and then we're at the happy hour, and he was kind of getting on some people's nerves, and then they were all like, oh, like, let's go get dinner, and like, Nick, ditch your date. I'm like, I didn't bring him. And so I was like, hey, my friends and I are going to go get dinner. You said earlier that you had plans with your friends later. Maybe, like, this would be a good time to split. Like, let's touch base later. He's like, oh, no, I could eat. And so then he followed me to dinner, and my friends were, like, getting sick of it at this point, because it's like, it was looking bad on me, because, like, who invites someone they just met on a date to dinner with their friends? But I didn't. I really, really didn't. And so it was really awkward, and when we parted ways at the end of the night, it was just awkward. He was kind of drunk, and I actually have seen him out a couple places since. I think I pointed him out to you at Bosco's one time. He's, like, blonde now and has...
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah, we won't say names, but I've seen him around. He seems to be doing well, so that's good. It just wasn't a very good date. I'm sure he's a very nice person.
I'm sure you'll have worse dates going forward. You never know.
There's been lots. So one of the stories I wanted to share, our friends submitted, is... So they were going on a date on, I forget which app they said it was. It was probably at least 10 years ago. They were quite a bit younger. And they went on the date. They were meeting up with someone they'd never met before, which can be pretty risky. They drove miles and miles and miles to get there. I think he said it was like a 2, maybe 3-hour drive.
Oh, wow.
And so he met this person. He had only seen face pictures up until this point. And then he opened the door, and he saw that the person in the pictures actually didn't have legs. And it wasn't that he was upset that, like, this person didn't have legs, just so surprised from not knowing that and having it not been mentioned. It, like, took him a while. But they actually ended up, like, hanging out and had, like, a really nice weekend. There wasn't really a romantic spark, but he got over the initial shock of feeling like this is, like, a big thing that I wasn't prepared for. But then they had a really nice weekend. They actually became good friends. I don't know that they're still in touch, but it was a big surprise for the apps. And then another story I had someone submit to me it was kind of confusing. So there's these two dating apps. One was called Boys Ahoy, and then the other app was called Meet Your Neighbors. My friend had just moved to the city and was trying to make friends on Meet Your Neighbors, and our other friend, this is how they met, he was on the dating app Boys Ahoy. Now these, it was kind of like the Grindr of its time, I think, but it wasn't like super well known. So two different apps looking for two different things. Now what they didn't know is these two apps, in order to make it look like there's more people on there, actually shared contacts from both.
What?
So this one person was on Boys Ahoy looking for a date. The other person was looking to meet their neighbors. They matched. The person who was looking to meet neighbors had a boyfriend, so it wasn't like he was not looking for anyone. They met. They like went out to dinner. One person was thinking, "Wow, this is a date." The other person was thinking, like, "Oh, great, I just met this great neighbor." And at the end, they kind of talk like, "Oh, should we meet again? Like, are you interested in me romantically?" Like, wait, this wasn't what I was looking for. Like, this was the Meet Your Neighbors app, and he was like, "No, I met you on Boys Ahoy." And it was just this huge confusion, but it's funny because they're actually really good friends today. It just goes to show you apps can be a little bit dicey sometimes.
That is so weird. That's wow.
I don't have any good stories as good as that, but those are some pretty good stories. All right, so let's get back to the review. So let's get into the episode. So I first want to talk about the acting challenge. So who do you think performed the best in the acting challenge, in your opinion?
I mean, the most memorable one was the first one, the End of Days. It was very well organized. Blair St. Clair did a really good job at, having a concept, leading her team, having a script. All four of them had their own characters. I thought it was very well thought out, and I really enjoyed it. And it was really, to be honest, the only one I really remember what actually happened. But that was my favorite one of the three dating app commercials.
So would you say Blair was your strongest overall?
I mean, kind of thinking back on, I think that Cracker did a really good job with her characterization, like slapping Blair, her character in the face, and like her being in, like, she did like a demon voice at one point. I forget what she said, but she was pretty funny in that whole thing. But I think Blair, even Eureka, I think all four of them were strong in that challenge.
But who would you say is your, like, did you say Cracker's your top?
Yeah, I would say Cracker.
I gotta pick a good picture for the bottom. I can't put them all in there.
Okay. Yes, Cracker.
No, I agree. Cracker was my favorite out of all of them. It was actually a tough call between her and some of the other girls. But I think what I really like about Miss Cracker is kind of like what you said, the demonic voice. I love that, and I think that it takes me back to Katya, where I love when people can turn on the sweetness and turn on the, like, demonic really fast. So it's like, oh, like, are you sure it's the apocalypse? It's the apocalypse. Like, I love that. It wakes me up, it grabs my attention, and it shows versatility. So I love that about her.
Well, sometimes it's kind of how I give you compliments. Like, Nick, I really like your hair.
Said no one ever. I got a haircut today. I thought it was nice. Yeah, no, I love that about her. It's really engaging, gets your attention, and it shows the versatility. She's not just a look queen, even though she's been giving us some really amazing looks so far. Who would you say you thought was the worst overall?
I would have to say, is it U-Haul? The
Yeah.
Asian one?
Yeah. Or Yuquan.
Whatever, U-Haul.
Yuan.
I call her U-Haul. Anyway, yeah, I think that she did a really bad job because she didn't really take much effort into making herself look as ugly as the other girls did in the challenge on her team. She spent a lot of time focusing on that instead of, like, really trying to come up with a good character to kind of portray with the other girls. So I kind of felt like she really fumbled and she just dropped the ball all around. So, I mean, she was absolutely the worst for me tonight.
No, I agree again. Yuquan, she was in the bottom for me. I would say I did feel bad for an instance because I know she wasn't doing as much painting, but she's also the only one that really had to rely on no sort of prosthetics.
Right.
Because, like, I know they told her, like, oh, we can't all be doing noses, but they were very different noses. I mean, you could still have a strange looking nose and, like, do other things to enhance it. I did feel like they kind of, like, took all the prosthetics. I mean, she's got to be aware of her surroundings and take what she can. But, like, Aquarius, did she need 3 noses? I think one nose that was ugly, like, was enough.
But at the same time, like, you're in a competition, and if you really want to stand out and if you really want to do something, you can't have the excuse of, oh, well, the other girls were rushing me, or,
Yeah.
They wanted me to do this or do that. No, if you want to win something, if you want to win this game, do what you're going to do and don't care what the other ones say. Like you have to make yourself stand out and excel.
You do. You have to push, and that's something I think that like queens learn every year. That it's like, yes, you can be professional and you can be nice, but what you can't be is passive. If you're going to be passive, you're not going to steal scenes. You're not going to get attention,
and you're going to walk all over.
Right, you're going to get walked over, and you're not going to be advocating for yourself. There's a difference between being passive and like representing yourself and being vocal, and that's very important, I think. And something that takes some of them a while to learn, and some of them don't learn it and they end up going home. Or some of them don't learn it and they end up in the top 3 and they end up being called Pearl. Well, yeah.
Bitter.
Sorry. So let's talk about the runway look. So there was a lot of really strong runway looks, and I didn't want to just narrow it all the way down to best and worst. So we're going to have best, worst, and most creative. So let's start with most creative. Who do you think had the most creative look on the runway?
I would have to say Cameron Michaels. She just had like she was had like the really well done wings, and then like the body part was like this sheer, like kind of like slim fitting like piece with like little feathers like all over it, and then the bottom half was like this beautiful like shiny black feathered like skirt. So I mean, and even she had like these horns, and I mean just the makeup around her face. You have to see it, but I mean I can't even describe it to give it justice as to how well it was done, but it was the most creative one that I thought on the runway tonight.
I would say for me it was close. Creativity, the Tweety Bird one was very creative, but I'll be 100% honest, I hated it a lot. I would say my most creative one was Miss Cracker. Not necessarily aesthetically 100% creative. Like, I thought it was very creative in look. She used a different color of feathers than some of the other ones. She incorporated nests. It wasn't just like feathers in a look. But I really liked that she tied it into something personal. She talked about how like a friend of mine died and I was grieving and a bluebird was building their nest outside my window. So it had a deeper meaning versus just like, I like Tweety Bird, or like, I mean, I appreciate cultural things and some people had some cultural references, but we do, sometimes people lean on that a little bit too much. I critiqued Bebe on that for All Stars 3, where it's like,
the Jungle Kitty, the whole entire season.
Yeah, I loved culture. I loved her culture and seeing a bit of her, but it was too much. I feel like I've gotten a little cultured out. I want to see some more of like
more
you.
substance.
Yeah, more substance. So I really liked Miss Crackers in terms of creativity. Who would you say you thought was the best overall in terms of looks?
Well, Miss Cracker was going to be my best. I mean, she had like the nest on her head. She had her feather dress, and then the back part of her skirt was an actual cage. Like, I thought it was very well.
Oh, I forgot about the cage.
Yeah, it was really, really, really well done. So, for my best look would be Miss Cracker for sure.
No, I really liked Miss Cracker over. I don't think she was my overall. My overall was actually Monique Hart. I love the white feathers and like the slight accents of gold. It made me think of oh my gosh, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there was an animated movie that came out probably about 10 years ago, and it was about these owls, and they were very beautiful and white, and they had like armor and things. I wish I could remember the name of the movie. Yeah, it was a movie all about owls, and they were like trying to save the world from like something. I actually didn't watch it. I just saw previews for it. But it reminded me of that, and I thought it looked really pretty. So I liked it. It was very, it wasn't too much. She had really good accents. They were well placed, and I really thought it was great. Who do you think the worst was for you?
It's kind of hard to remember all 12 of them. The one that I liked the least, I would have to say U-Haul. I mean, she had.
I like that you're saying U-Haul.
Yeah, I mean, someone else made a joke about it.
Yeah,
that's how I remember her, because I don't even know how to say her name. But I mean, she had like these it was like a crow, and her head was like a rose bush, or like roses in like a red wig. I mean, it made no sense. It was more of like a thrown together kind of thing than it was a concept. So I no.
So before I say my least favorite, I will say one thing that bothered me about this challenge is there wasn't a lot of creativity in some of the looks. Like, there were some very beautiful looks. A lot of them are great, and it was hard for me to find what I didn't like. But this kind of takes me back to episode 1 of this season, where the winner, that black dress, like the very ruffly kind of feathery look where it comes down very deep in a V. a lot of them had that very similar same silhouette that I kind of said, like, I feel like I see this silhouette so often with queens. I will say overall, my least favorite was Dusty's. And I'm sorry, I know you're a fan of hers.
Yeah, it was a weird one.
I thought that, like, neck down, great. I didn't like the makeup and the wig that went with it, though. It felt very disjointed, very separate. Like,
yeah, it was hard to see his face and like his eyes, and
it was the lashes were so thick and white. Like, overall, like, she's the Butterface, actually. She goes with the app. Like, if you cut her off here, beautiful. Maybe needed a little bit of editing, but the face needed a lot of editing. But I really liked what she's done so far this season, so I hope this is just a minor trip. I am surprised she didn't get red for that at all. So let's talk a little bit about the Untucked episode. There was a lot going on there. I will say, I'm very glad that we could actually hear what people were saying this time. That was nice.
Yeah.
So I first want to bring up the arguing between Vixen and Aquaria. So any thoughts you want to weigh in there?
I mean, from what I'm hearing, like, from the rest of the girls, like, I guess Aquaria has been kind of, like, throwing out these, like, really shady, snide comments to everybody, like, as, like, the whole group. And they're all kind of, like, reading her, you know, like, taking their own take on what she's saying and perceiving it their own way. But I just kind of feel like, yeah, she's being kind of, like, you know, snarky, but at the same time, Vixen is like a shark. Like, she hears one little piece of anything that really doesn't have anything to do with her, and she just jumps on it, like, gnaws on it, and turns it into this big, over exaggerated, like, dramatic episode. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think it gets taken to an ugly place very quickly, and she elevates it. And I think Miss Cracker put it well. She goes, all right, like, you can have an argument with somebody. You don't have to be down at a 1 and be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, like, I'm super polite. Like, you could be at a 5. But you do not need to escalate it to a 10.
Or 20.
Yeah, a 10 or a 20. Like, this is like the equivalent of, like, oh, I pinched you, and then you pull out a gun. Like, it's a big overreaction, and it's making things escalate way more. Is Aquaria innocent in this situation? Absolutely not.
No.
She picked a fight, and I always say, like, do not start a fight that you're not prepared to win.
And I wouldn't say it was even a fight. I think it was more of, like, her trying, like...
You're right.
I think that she's trying to have some sort of a humor behind what she's doing, like, as far as, like, throwing shade. She's trying to be funny, but she doesn't know how to do that in the way that the other queens will perceive it as funny. She's just kind of, like, saying things out there to kind of, like, you know, get it laughing with everybody else or whatever. But Vixen is taking it completely the wrong way and just totally over-exaggerating the whole situation.
And it's very different when someone who has, like, a drier personality most of the time. Aquaria has a lot of great looks, and she can turn on personality when she needs to. But when she's in the workroom, it's very dry. And I think when you, like, think back to season 8, Derek Barry, she has a very dry personality. And whether she means them or not, whether it's passive aggressive or not, I'm not here to make that argument. But she'll make a dig, and then someone will dig back, and then all of a sudden she's escalating.
She's very defensive.
Yeah, she gets very defensive. She can't handle as much what she dishes out. And I think Aquaria kind of, like, did that poke, but wasn't ready for the poke back.
Well, and the thing, too, is, like, there's a huge age gap between them. Like, Aquaria is, like, very young, early 20s, and the rest of them are, like, in their upper 20s, early 30s. So there's a huge maturity level between them. So, obviously, you know, the Vixen can come back at her and make her, like, pretty much just crush her in anything because she's so young and doesn't know how to, like, you know, like, fuck back.
And I'm really glad that Monique Hart and Cracker kind of stepped in here to kind of be some mediators. Monique had a lot of personal things today saying, I don't think this was Aquaria's intention, but she pointed out, like, this is what it looks like. This looks like a scared little white girl who is being dominated or bullied by a loud black woman, which Vixen can be loud. She can be rambunctious, but you, like we said before, like, you can't poke the bear and then, like, cower and be the victim. Like,
yeah,
I don't think Aquaria intentionally meant it that way. I don't think she was trying to be shady. I think she was trying to read, but some people aren't as good at it. Like, I have friends that make jokes. I used to be that way too. I would, like, make a joke. If they don't get my sense of humor, it comes off as rude.
When you say stupid stuff, I'm a lot older than you. I'm just like, oh, he's a kid, whatever, it's all good.
I don't know no better.
Yeah, I mean, come on, like, grow up.
I like how I'm the example. I'm the Aquaria. So, and I just want to touch base on like Miss Cracker speaking up.
That was very nice of her.
I was glad she spoke up, and she didn't just take one side. She said, you know what? You're really good at pushing buttons, and you're really good at pushing buttons. You rub salt in the wound. You rub salt in the wound. Like, let's just get over it. Vixen kind of tried to like take it to a 10 with her, and she's just like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, I'm glad to see some personality of Cracker outside the workroom.
And maturity.
Yeah. She's mature, but she's going to stand up for herself, and she's going to stand up for other people and try to be the mediator. So that's what I'm really liking about her so far.
And if she doesn't win RuPaul's Drag Race, I think she'll at least win Miss Congeniality.
Maybe. We'll see. There's been a lot of nice queens. I think we aren't seeing them as much, but they're not as big a show stealers in the workroom right now.
As they fizzle down, I'm sure it'll start to kind of
fizzles and sizzles. All right. So another Untucked thing I wanted to talk about. Monique and Miss Mayhem. This wasn't as big of an argument.
Oh yeah.
I see both sides in this where Miss Mayhem's like, I don't want to rock the boat. She seems to know what she's doing. And I don't see it as much as her throwing Monique under the bus. I think Monique's going to take it more sensitive because it's going to feel that way from an outsider's perspective. Eureka, did I not say as soon as Eureka walked in the workroom, okay, Eureka's here. She's going to give her 2 cents on something that she has nothing to do with.
Well, the first thing that she said was, "Oh, well, who threw who under the bus?" Like, really? Like,
and that's really not what happened. They just said, like, "Hey, like they actually coaxed this out of her." It wasn't like, "Oh, I'm blaming my group." Michelle said, "Hey, you seemed uncomfortable with this. Why didn't you speak up? Who should you have spoken up to? Why didn't you speak up?" And she took ownership of that. She said, "I should have spoke up. I didn't agree with what we were doing, but I was trying to be a team player and I just listened." She said, "Yes, Monique was like a bit of a big personality and being very directorial, but she didn't say like she was a bad person or did a bad job or was being a bully." And Monique's side, she said, like, I asked her, like, do you feel comfortable with it? And she didn't speak up. So I don't see Monique in the wrong, but I also don't see, why am I forgetting
Mayhem?
names? Yeah, I don't see Mayhem in the wrong either.
Well, and I think the difference between both of them in the situation was that
It got spun differently.
Well, Monique wasn't in the bottom. Mayhem was. So you have that, whole, what's the word, perspective.
Yeah.
And then actually being in the challenge and doing it, before you watch the commercial to see how it all played out, like, you don't think about how it's going to turn out. So, I mean, yeah, you might think, okay, well, this will be fine. I won't say anything, but it'll probably still look good. I mean, you just never know how to take it or how it's going to turn out. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of, like, different factors that kind of, like...
And when you're in the bottom like that, you feel cornered. Like...
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I need to say something that's going to make them give me a second chance. So I don't think people can take those kinds of cornered perspectives too much to heart because every season this happens.
Yeah.
Every season, like, who should go home and why? Like, they're going to make you pick someone. You can't be upset if it's you. Now, some situations you could be upset, like when everyone's ganging up on one person. Alaska talks. But, if you're ganging up on some person and you don't really have like a good reason, that's different. But if you're giving examples, or you know what, take the safe route, make a pageant answer. Like, oh, I'll say so-and-so because they said me, or I'll say someone who's not here. Like, you can play it safe.
Well, and there's been, and that's the thing too, like sometimes taking responsibility and being accountable is also just as classy. And for example, when Darian Lake, remember in her season, when she was like, I nominate myself to go home because I flopped this challenge.
Yeah.
So, it could go either way. She was in the bottom too, but she was still,
Yep.
just have some class.
And let's be real. Like, this is what makes good TV. Not being classy makes good TV. That's why I asked you to be on this show with me.
Wow.
Because you're full of...
Stupid kid.
You're full of not class. All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add on this episode?
No, I think we covered a lot of everything that...
No, it was a good... I honestly really thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I kind of thought they were grasping for straws with the dating app concept because I wasn't super impressed by the pharmaceutical thing last week. So glad this was a strong episode. I think they did really good things with it, and that's pretty much it for me. I was impressed with the episode.
I liked it. It was good.
All right, so this has been another episode of Nick's Nerd Network. This is Nick signing off. Bye.
Bye.
If you like this episode of Nick's Nerd Network, please like and subscribe. If you have different opinions or would like to share some of your ideas, please share these in the comment section below. Please keep it constructive and friendly. Thanks so much for watching and have a wonderful day.